I want you to think about what great candidates you just saw. And I don't know if you know who they're running against, and it doesn't really matter. But these candidates are so much better than what we have. And these positions are so important to the future of Iowa, to our voting rights, to our ethics, to corruption, and to agriculture, that we need to get out there and work for them. These aren't races that you usually hear very much about, but let's give another hand for Rob, Tim, and Deidre as they are out there working the last 51 days. Thank you. So the next speaker is on behalf of the Hubbell-Hart team. This would be, there he is, State Representative Chris Hall. I know him pretty well because we serve in the same caucus in the same chamber. Chris, come on up. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you, Beth. And thank you all for the invitation to join you. I have come a little ways. I'm a representative from Sioux City, and as Beth mentioned, here to speak on behalf of the Hubbell-Hart campaign. I want to say outright thank you for the invitation to join at this beautiful venue, and also from experience and personal knowledge, I want to say thank you for sending Representative Wessel-Krishel, Representative Heddens, and Senator Quirmbach down to the Capitol. I've watched as year after year they fight for women, for the state's most vulnerable populations, and also for the students at Iowa State University. And they are leaders within our caucus and also just tremendous leaders for you to have sent to join us. I grew up in Sioux City, and growing up, I grew up in a household. My father worked at the Department of Corrections for his entire career. My mother was a social worker and actually volunteered in her spare time as the Woodbury County Chair. So I've been coming to events like this, and the joke around Sioux City is that I've been stapling yard signs since I was about 3 or 4 years old. Being an elected state representative was a pretty easy transition for me after hanging around the campaign office for so many years. But growing up in a family that really cared about public service helped for me to look at our Democratic candidates this year and understand why it's so important to support them. And part of the reason that I'm very proud to support Fred Hubbell in his quest for the governor's office is because we have an opportunity to elect somebody who cares and shares deeply about the democratic values that we hold. But more important than that, we also have the opportunity to elect somebody with the leadership experience and the financial skills to help put this state back on the right track. And the state has been on a wrong track for several years now under the Branstad-Reynolds administration. Many of you have probably heard the phrase that budgets are a moral document. And let me tell you what the morality of the current budget has done to this state and what it looks like operating in the Capitol. Not only did Governor Reynolds turn a $900 million surplus into a $200 million deficit, but at the time when it was needed for the state to try and balance our budget and find dollars that we could spare to shore up and remain in the black, Governor Reynolds chose to hold harmless the programs that go to out-of-state corporations and big companies, and instead balanced that budget on the backs of our most vulnerable. And that meant that at the same time Governor Reynolds asked for $150,000 for her office to move down the hall in her transition from lieutenant governor, she was cutting programs that go to children who need hearing aids. She was cutting nursing home inspections and dollars that end up going to protect people who are victims of domestic violence. It's the same type of hypocrisy that we saw as children in our school system were provided 1% of new dollars and out-of-state insurance companies were provided 7.5%. So there's a lot of need to question whether our state is on the right track and whether they actually are paying attention to the difference between right and wrong. I just ask you, is your life better now than it was 4 years ago in terms of income, health care, the future of your children, and the health of our environment? I know that you're all doing so already, but during these last 51 days, give it everything you've got, because supporting the Hubbell-Hart ticket is also about supporting a state government that is as good and decent as the people it represents. Thank you so much for letting me join.